So you're interested in VR, but you feel overwhelmed by all the choices out there. And you don't know the difference between FOV and SDE, or what the heck is a sweet spot? Well, you came to the right place. We're going to talk about this stuff today and hopefully give you an idea of how to look for a proper VR headset to meet your needs. Stick around. Welcome everyone to the special edition on Get Your Game On, the channel dedicated to immersive gaming experiences. Now, arguably, VR is one of the most immersive things you can do in the world today. So, if you're new to it though, it's a little overwhelming. We want to talk about some of the basic terminology that you're going to run into, also talk about some of the gear that's out there right now, and then we're even going to talk a little bit about what's coming in the near future to help you make a decision if now's the right time to get into virtual reality. So, because virtual reality is such a huge topic, this is going to be a pretty basic video. If you're an experienced VR veteran, you may want to skip ahead. I've got timestamps in the links below. And then also, use this as a piece of the overall puzzle of what you want to buy. What I want this to be is more of a launching point for you, to get an idea of what direction to start going to, and then follow up with some more research. So let's start off by talking about some basic terminology in virtual reality. So, in the opening we mentioned a couple terms. Let's start with talking about SDE. Now, SDE stands for Screen Door Effect. And that was something that really plagued the early VR headsets. Because the resolution was smaller, it looked like whatever image you were looking at looked like you were looking through a screen door. Now, modern headsets have gotten better and better, and the screen door effect, or SDE, has gotten a lot smaller over the years. But on some headsets, it's still there. So that's one consideration. Another consideration is FOV, or field of view. In field of view, think of that as how wide you can see. Now, early headsets all suffered from field of view. They all were in about the 100-degree field of view range. And it looked like you were looking at the world through a set of, say, scuba goggles or something like that. So it's very narrow. Now, over the years, FOV has increased on some headsets. So that's one decision you'll need to make, is how important the wide to narrow FOV or field of view is for you. Also, sweet spot. Well, a sweet spot is simply the area in the lenses that the visuals look the best. And usually to find the sweet spot on most headsets, you have to kind of adjust it, move the headset around to find that optimal spot. Part of the sweet spot is also IPD, or interpupillary distance, which is the distance between your pupils. That's different on everybody. So know your IPD, or know that you want to have a headset that's capable of adjusting the IPD. So, additionally, there are things called glare and God rays. This comes from the headset's lens design. Almost all modern headsets use what's called a Fresnel lens, and I'll show you a picture of that here. And you can really notice a Fresnel lens because it has concentric rings that kind of go into the middle of the lens. What that does, unfortunately, is when you're in a high contrast scene, say like nighttime or out in space, you tend to get what's called glare, which is kind of a blurring of the objects, or everything has a bloom behind it. And then you also get God rays, which are kind of a light beam that shoots out from the bright spot or the white area in the dark scene, and you get these kind of streaks going out. So God rays and glare a lot of times are interchangeable, but that's something you want to be well aware of as well if you're looking for a new headset. So real quick, I want to talk about the different tracking schemes that VR headsets use. And I've got a video that I'll link below that goes into great detail about how the different headsets track things. I just want to give you a basic overview. Really, there's two types of tracking that are in use now, and that's called inside-out tracking, which is what the HP Reverb G2 and the Quest 2 use. And that's a system that has cameras integrated into the headset. I can show you right here. So we've got these cameras that are positioned around the headset, and they kind of view the room, and that's how they decide where that headset is in space. Now that style of tracking, it's more affordable of the headset, so it keeps the price down. But you also have to have lighting in your room. You can't do that in a dark space because it's a camera. It needs to be able to see its surroundings. The interesting thing also with that, an ideal room setup for something like that is something with a lot of contrast. So like a lot of maybe some furniture or paintings on the walls, things that the camera can differentiate that isn't just a blank wall. So for a room setup for inside-out tracking, you want to be in a room environment that has lots of different objects scattered around on the walls and stuff. The other side, the other type of tracking, which is the best tracking currently, is called outside in. And this is the system that uses what are called lighthouses or base stations that basically shoot little infrared laser beams into the room, and then the headset picks them up. And what makes that so good is, number one, you don't need light because it can be pitch black, and the little lasers, which you don't see, they're invisible to you, but the headset sees, can pick those up. So there's been times I've actually been gaming, and I've gamed so long I take the headset off and all of a sudden it's dark, and I never noticed in the headset because the tracking never went away when I was using some of my older headsets that use the base station tracking or the outside in tracking. We talked about the room. So the room setup, interestingly enough for this, is a little opposite. You don't want pictures, you don't want mirrors, you don't want reflective surfaces, and it really doesn't care. Generally, flat walls are fine. You don't need a lot of things hanging on walls, but really the thing you're avoiding in a room space is anything that's reflective that can interfere. So those are really the two types, and again, if you're interested in more details on all the different types, check out one of the links that I have in the description below. So that's some of the basic terminology that should cover, at least get you started in understanding what different headsets can provide. So let's get into some of the actual headsets themselves. One of the pieces of VR that I get asked the most frequently about is this right here. This is the Quest 2, and it's made by the company formerly known as Facebook, now known as Meta. This is probably the most affordable headset out there. So can it be any good? Yes, it can. This headset right here is probably the right headset for, I'd say, 75% of the people that want to try VR. So let's talk a little bit more about why the Quest 2 may be the perfect headset for you. Now, as you can see here, this is what's included when you buy the headset. And you get the headset, you get the controllers, you get the charger cable, you get everything you need to get into VR. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest advantages of this headset. One of the biggest advantages, and the reason it's so popular, is that it can be a standalone headset. That means it doesn't plug into a computer, it doesn't use your phone, it simply plays VR, and everything is run in the headset itself. Or it can actually be plugged into a PC via a cable, and you can use it more like the other traditional VR headsets that are tethered to a computer, and that gives you that little bit better experience. You can have a little bit better graphics. You can play more games like on Steam VR. So that's an option as well. And if you're really adventurous, there's even the option to have this play PC VR wirelessly. You have to have some other components, and it's a little more technical to get it to work. But it is possible. And this is really the only modern headset that you can currently play PC VR wirelessly. So you've got a lot of people that are picking this up to do that. I want to talk a little bit about if you do choose to buy this headset, I have some recommendations for you. So if money is the most critical factor, obviously the base headset, 128 gigabytes, base strap, all of this stuff, $300. And that's an amazing price. That's an amazing value for what you're getting. Again, it's that's everything you need to enjoy VR. Now, if you're going to use this headset more as a PC VR headset, like a more traditional headset that's tethered to a computer, well then, if you're worried about money, you don't necessarily have to have this memory upgrade. If you can afford it, I still recommend it because more is always better. But if you're going to do this as a PC VR headset, you're going to have a link cable. So As you can see here, the one from Oculus is $80 almost, and one of the reasons is it's got a fiber optic core. There are some cheaper out there. You can look for yourself and see what you can find. One thing you're going to look for that I recommend, make sure one end has the 90 degree like you see here. That just makes it a lot nicer going into the headset. It's not as likely to stick straight out. You're not as likely to hit it when you're in VR. Also, keep an eye on the length. This one, as you can see, is 16 feet. The reason that's important is because if you're going to do any room scale, you need to have enough cable that it's not going to be yanking you back when you hit the end of the cable. So longer is always better. And like I said, as you can see, this one's 16 feet. The next upgrade I would recommend is upgrading this strap. Now, this is the standard strap that comes with it, and it will work. It'll get the job done, but it's not really comfortable over a long period of time. So there are better options out there. So the next upgrade I'd recommend for you, and really this is for anybody that's using the Oculus Quest 2, if they want more comfort, go ahead and get an Elite strap. This strap, as you can see, has a lot better fitting. You can see where it more cradles the head. It's made of a little bit better construction. They did have a problem with them snapping when they first came out, but that looks like that's no longer an issue. And finally, going back to the setup, if you are going to use this standalone, or you're going to try to tackle the wireless mods to get this to play PCVR wirelessly, which I'll have a link to some instructions on how to get that to work in the description below. But you may consider also, instead of just the regular strap, you may look at this one that includes a battery. It's basically the exact same strap as the Elite strap, but this part right here has a battery that will allow you to play for a little bit more extended period of time. And just be aware, the external battery won't work if you're tethered to the PC, because the battery actually plugs into the same port that the link cable does. Now, there are also some aftermarket straps out there. There's way too many things to get into, so we're just going to stick with these Quest straps that come from Oculus. But just know there are other options. If you want to explore those on your own, it's not a bad idea to do so. One other big advantage to the Quest 2 is the ease of use. So this thing is extremely portable. You basically can take this headset and the controllers and you can take it to a friend's house. You can use it wherever you want. And it's easy to set up as well. So the way you set this up is you basically have a controller and you can see the room through the cameras when you get the headset, and you just draw your play area. You basically just draw an area out around where it's safe to play and you're not running into anything. And then what that does is it creates this boundary that you will see in the headset. So anytime you get close to a boundary, you'll see the boundary appear. And then if you happen to get too close to the boundary, you get a notice that you're almost out of space to play. And so that keeps you from running into the walls, running into furniture, running into all that stuff. And it's super easy, super quick to set up. It's the easiest setup of any of the VR headsets that are out there. So now let's talk about some of the cons of the Quest 2. The big problem with this headset, even if you plug it into a PC and you're playing through a PC in PC VR mode, the battery will eventually go dead, even if it's plugged into a computer. So that means that even if you're plugged into a computer, at some point you're going to have to stop because the battery in this headset is going to die. The other disadvantage is it actually has a fairly narrow field of view. The field of view in the Quest 2 is online with what we saw in our first generation VR headsets. One of the other big disadvantages of this is the IPD that we talked about. Now, it has variable IPD, but the unfortunate thing is the IPD is locked to 3 settings. So the IPD can only be set to 58, 63, or 68, and that's the millimeters and how wide your eyes are. Most likely, your eyes are not going to be one of those 3 exact numbers. For example, my IPD is pretty wide. It's a 69.5. So I can't quite dial in the perfect IPD for this headset, but it'll get you close, and it's still definitely usable. Just know that you don't have the ultimate IPD adjustment in this. Now, one of the biggest problems that we've seen in the Quest 2, and one of the biggest reasons people don't want to buy a Quest 2, is because of the requirement that it has to be tied to a Facebook account. Now, Facebook has recently stated they are no longer going to make that a requirement. So in the near future, you shouldn't have to tie the headset to a specific Facebook account. So just know, if that's the one reason that you have stayed away from the Quest 2, sometime in the near future, Facebook/Meta will no longer have the requirement that this headset ties to a Facebook account. So I know that's going to be a big plus for a lot of people. So let's go on now and talk about my personal favorite currently. This is what I use every day, my daily driver. And this is the Hewlett-Packard Reverb G2. This thing's been out for a little over a year. And this thing currently has the best resolution of any headset out there. So let's show you some of the specs on this thing. Now, I want to point out, all the headsets that we're going to talk about from this point forward are tethered headsets. That means they have to be plugged into a computer in order to work. So that's true for the HP and all the other headsets that I'm about to talk about. The advantage to that is you get a little bit more performance out of them. As you can see, this headset has more resolution than the Oculus Quest 2. And it also is, just like the Oculus Quest 2, has inside-out tracking. The setup process still involves the same concept, but instead of a controller, you actually take the headset and you point it at the computer and you walk it around the play space. So that'll set up your boundary so that you can keep from running into anything. And what that means is it's still fairly easy to set up, and it's still portable in that you could take it over to a friend's house. It's just the setup procedure is just a little more complicated. Well, let's talk about some of the pros of the HP Reverb G2. First off, it comes with everything you need to enjoy VR except for the computer to run it. It has all the controllers, it comes with the headset, and the cable to plug into the computer. In addition to that, the headset is built very well. It actually has amazing graphics. As you can see, it's 2160 by 2160, one of the highest resolutions. And the sound is amazing along with the adjustable IPD. So those are some key advantages. Now, if you do any research on the HP Reverb G2, you're also going to probably hear about a problem with the headset not always working with the computers or being finicky, especially with the AMD computers. Don't worry about that. HP recently fixed that problem with a new cable design that they have actually sent out to all the Reverb G2 users that were having any problems, and that is the cable that comes with all the new headsets as well. So if you're watching other reviews and they talk about that problem appears to be fixed from HP now. Okay, let's quickly talk about some of the cons of the HP Reverb G2. There aren't many, but I do need to make note of them. Now, the HP Reverb G2 has a little bit larger FOV than the Oculus Quest 2, but it's still not a huge FOV. This headset is more focused on clarity and detail in the screens than expanding the FOV out. But don't worry, for those of you that are interested in a wider FOV, our next two headsets are for you. Also, as I said, you have to have a computer, and realistically, you have to have a fairly strong computer to get the maximum out of this headset. From my experience playing a high detail game like Star Wars Squadrons or something like that, I found that anything less than a 3060 really didn't allow me to set the quality settings up nearly as high as I would like to maximize the high resolution of this headset. But overall, I absolutely love this headset. This is my primary recommendation to anyone that's looking for a really good headset that's not at the value level and will give them a good VR experience overall without being overly complicated to set up. So now I want to move on to a few other headsets that are in the market that I don't personally have. So we'll head out to the internet. But I've done a lot of research on them, and they may fill a little niche for some of you out there. So I just want to touch on them briefly. This is the Valve Index, and this is the oldest headset on our list. This was released in the summer of 2019, but it's still considered by many to be one of the best headsets ever created. The Valve Index pioneered this off-ear headphone style that we saw on the HP Reverb G2. In fact, the HP licensed this sound system for their headset from Valve. Now, right away I'm going to talk about one of the biggest problems with this headset, and that's that it is more complicated to set up than the typical inside-out tracking. So the setup for the next headsets that we're going to talk about today require base stations. And base stations have to be either permanently attached to the walls or at the very least set up with a very sturdy stand. If these bounce around, it's going to give you a jitter or jarring effect in the headset, which can potentially make you sick. So the extra step of installing the base stations can be a little daunting to some people. And if this looks like more than you're willing to tackle, then this headset is probably not the one for you. Now, if you are willing to go to the trouble of actually installing the base stations, the experience you're going to get is far better than any other VR experience you're going to have as far as tracking goes. The outside-in tracking is considered by almost universally everyone as the best type of tracking. The big thing that the Index brings to the game is it's got a little bit wider field of view than the Quest 2 or the HP Reverb G2. You get a little bit of that wider feel when you're in the headset. It's a decent screen, a little smaller resolution than what we're seeing in the newer headsets, but the advantage to that is that you actually can run this headset with a little bit slower or older computer. So if you don't have that state-of-the-art computer that I recommend you have for the HP, this might be a good choice for you. Now that does come at somewhat of a cost to a little more screen door effect, but some people who like a field of view over a clear image will probably want to go to this headset or at least take a look at it. The other thing that's really nice about it is that this headset comes with controllers that are also considered to be the best available by many who use VR. These are the Index controllers, and what makes them so special is they are high-tech pieces that actually go farther than just a stick that you can move your hands around. They actually have the ability to track your individual fingers. So you can actually feel more like you just have your hands in the game, more so than any other controllers. In addition to that, they track very well with the Lighthouse style tracking. And you can actually take your hand off of them. They have a strap that allows them to stay on your hand even when you let go of your grip. And for example, when you're throwing a grenade, you actually can let go of it and you're not going to chuck the controller across the room. So that's always a good thing as well. The cons to this, as we talked about, it's a more complicated setup. So in addition to setting up the lighthouses, you also still have to go through the software calibration routine, just like you did with the other headsets. And that basically involves taking the controllers and basically walking around the room and setting up your boundaries. And one of the biggest cons is the price. So you're talking about $1,000 for this whole setup. Now that does give you the lighthouses, the Index knuckle controllers, and the headset. And the good thing about that is once you purchase this, down the road, most other high-end headsets also use the Lighthouse style tracking that use outside in. So you would have the components if you ever wanted to upgrade down the road. You'd already have your lighthouses and your controllers. So the biggest disadvantage to the Valve Index is the glare and the God rays. And that is why we want to talk a little bit about the next headset, which is called the Pimax Artisan. So in almost every circumstance, the Valve Index is a better choice than this Pimax headset for beginners. The only places that the Pimax headset shines is in the field of view,
Pimax is known for their ultra-wide field of views, and the Artisan, which is the headset for beginners, has a 170 degree field of view. And also, the lenses in this headset don't have as much glare and God rays. The only time I would recommend this headset for anyone is if you absolutely just want the absolute widest field of view possible, or you're going to be playing games with high contrast like Space Sims or horror games, something where you're going to be in a lot of dark spaces with bright lights coming on. Other than that, I'd recommend the Index. This headset still requires base stations, and it still requires the same controllers. So if you are going to buy this headset, I highly recommend that you purchase the player kit, which is your knuckle controllers that we talked about. These are actually the Index knuckles that come with the Valve Index, and then also the base stations. And then I'd recommend, if you don't have a good gaming headset for audio, get this modular audio head strap, because otherwise the audio in this headset is really bad. And as you can see, we're just shy. We're $971 versus where we were for $999. So only in those extreme cases would I recommend you get the Pimax. You're also going to see here, the Pimax also has a few other headsets in their family lineup. Do not get one of these headsets if you are a newcomer to VR. This 200 degrees FOV leads to a lot of distortions at the edges of the lenses. And for newcomers, it could give you a really bad experience in VR if you're not used to virtual reality. So please, if you're new to VR, do not purchase one of these headsets. If you're set on having a wide field of view, please just look at this Artisan. And again, these prices don't include the base stations or the controllers. You have to add that extra $500. So just please don't do these. Look at the Artisan if you want to go the direction of a Pimax. So here we are, finally comparing these headsets that we just talked about side by side. I've got all the specs here listed, and one important note: everyone's experience in VR will be slightly different based on your head shape, your eye placement, your IPD. So no two people will have the exact same experience when they put on a VR headset. But this will give you a relative comparison to each of the headsets. For example, the Quest 2 will always have a smaller FOV than the Artisan. It may not be 104, but it will always be relative to the other headsets. The price I included also includes the equipment like the Lighthouse base stations and controllers to get these headsets functional, except for the computer system. And again, the only headset on here without needing a computer is the Quest 2. And one final note on my ratings down below. These ratings are relative to each headset. It doesn't mean that if something's rated as poor, that it's poor overall. It means it's poor in relation to the other three headsets that we're looking at. So let's real quickly talk about who these headsets are for. The Quest 2 is for the user that's new to VR and doesn't have a computer or has a very low-performing computer, or somebody that wants the ability to play wireless VR if they're willing to put the extra effort in to get that to work. The HP Reverb G2 is for the person who wants the absolute best clarity in the screens. And again, this is for people that may be doing flight simulators or racing simulators, and they absolutely want to be able to read the gauges in the cockpit, those types of things. Now again, the Quest 2 is the only headset that does not need to be tied to a computer to function. The G2 is also for those people that don't want to deal with the fact that the Quest 2 will limit your playtime because the battery will drain over time. So the G2, the Valve Index, the Artisan, all can be played indefinitely. The Valve Index is for people who value the FOV. They want a little bit wider field of view, and the clarity isn't as important. This would be people that might play more of the arcade-style games like Beat Saber, stuff like that, although the Quest 2 is also good for that. Also, if they want a quality headset but may not have a computer that quite performs as well as the top-grade computers. So this is a great option for them. The Artisan. Who is the Artisan for? The Pimax Artisan is for the people that absolutely value the field of view over everything else. And that means you're going to be sacrificing the quality on the color of the screens, the clarity, all those things. But if you absolutely want the widest FOV possible, the Artisan is the best choice for beginners. The other person that would use the Artisan would be someone who's going to play a lot of high contrast style games like space simulators or maybe horror games where they don't want to deal with the glare of the Valve Index. Again, if you don't fit that category, the Valve Index is a better purchase across the board except for those two factors. So I hope that gives you an idea of which of these headsets might be best for you.
So those are kind of the basic headsets that I think will fit the majority of you wanting to dabble or get started in virtual reality. But let's talk a little bit about what's coming in the near future. So within the next year, there's a lot of speculation, and again, none of this is announced or official, but this is kind of the general feeling in the virtual reality market. So I want to share this with you to kind of give you some perspective on whether it's time is right now to jump into the virtual reality market, or if maybe you want to wait until some of these new products come out. So first and foremost, we talked about the Valve Index. That headset's quite a bit older. And everybody is expecting a brand new headset from Valve this coming year in 2022. This headset is rumored to be a standalone headset similar to the Quest, and it's rumored to even potentially use what they call split computing or split rendering, where they're going to have the headset be able to do some of the computing power so that your computer at home doesn't have to be quite as powerful as they have to be right now. So that's something on the horizon. I can tell you Valve products are amazing. They're always top quality, but they're not cheap. And I don't expect this new headset, which if you're interested, right now it's codenamed Deckard, and there's some stuff out on the internet about it. But I imagine it's going to be pretty fantastic if you want that wireless experience, and it's going to be kind of like what the Quest 2 does, only at the next level. But again, I fully expect it to be in the $1,000 plus range when it comes out. Let's also talk about Facebook and Meta. They have announced their Project Cambria, which there's not a lot of details out there, but it seems like Project Cambria is going to be definitely a more expensive headset than the Quest 2. They're aiming for a little bit higher tier. They're talking about having a lot of face tracking and body tracking and all those kinds of things in it. So if your interest is going to be more social VR, where you want to be in chat rooms and you want your avatar to basically move like you move, and your eye movements and your mouth movements, it might be worth waiting for that to come around. The Pimax 12K QLED is scheduled to be released at the end of next year. We'll see if they make their target. I have a whole video. I'll pop it up here on the QLED, the 12K QLED announcement. But that, if they get it together, will be the headset that I think everybody will want to get if they actually pull off everything that they say they're pulling off. We'll have to wait and see on that. So I don't think for the low end there's going to be much out there that's going to beat the value of the Quest 2. I think the Quest 2 is going to be around for a while. So if you're really leaning that way, I don't think you're going to make a mistake of buying a Quest 2 and then even a year from now you'll be like, oh my goodness, there's this perfect other thing that's right in that price point. If you're leaning towards the Quest 2, I'd say now is a fine time to get it, and you'll be in good shape. Depending on what your other needs are, if you want to go for the higher end stuff, obviously you're going to want to wait for that stuff to come out. Virtual reality is an amazing thing. It really can take you to another world, or allow you to fly a jet fighter plane, or explore a dungeon. And the biggest thing that I was surprised by when I first got into VR is how much the scale impacts you. So you might be used to playing computer games on either your television set or a computer monitor, but when you're in a VR headset, everything feels lifelike. The first time I flew a jet under a tanker plane and just really realized how large this tanker was, it just blew my mind. So I recommend everybody at least try VR and hopefully you'll fall in love with it just like I did. So that's it for now. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I hope everyone got some valuable information from all this. So until next time, remember to get your game on.